It's time to welcome to the stream Mary Georgescu and Rachel Lee speaking with Naomi Clark about Nothing to See Here. Take it away.
All right, hey everybody, you get a double dose of me today for the whole hour. But fortunately, I have here to temper my personality Mary Georgescu and Rachel Lee, both alumni of the Game Center and also now alumni of the Incubator program. With their game, Nothing to See Here. Should we hold it up for the camera?
Yeah,
check this out. Yeah, let's do a tight zoom. Only kidding. Were you really gonna do it? No. So, first of all, you should just give us the spiel about the game. People who have not played this game, it has a subtitle, An Outrageous Storytelling Game for Adults. What's that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nothing to See Here is an adult party game. Oh, sure.
Okay.
So Nothing to See Here is exactly that, an adult party game where you are dealt a hand of cards and you have to explain your way out of the predicament you find yourself in. So everyone is in the same awkward situation, and it makes for incredible storytelling. And every single item is a little bit suggestive, which is why adult only.
And what do you guys have here? This is like the prototype version? Which prototype? Is this like the very first prototype?
So this was the polished project.
Nice.
I think Brendan printed this out.
Nice. Yeah, so take us back in time. So this is when it was called the Cheaters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because originally the awkward situation was always that you were caught in flagrante delicto, as I say, in a compromising situation. Yep. with somebody who then your spouse would think that you're cheating on with them, and you have to explain your way out of it, right?
Yeah.
But where did this game come from? How did it go? How did it go from here to here?
Yeah, that was a long story, but this was originally a class project in Eric's class, so design one, and then it was a narrative game, and then I think. Yeah, a poet came over to class, and then so we were gonna design a game based on inspired by a poem that they written, and this came out of that.
Yeah,
and
the
then,
poem was about like cheating essentially.
Right.
It was about doing stuff behind another person's back or whatever. But I think the impetus and the format sort of came from a different card game. I'm trying to remember.
Fun Employed.
Fun
I think
Employed. Yeah. Fun Employed. Yeah.
And then I think final project we get to choose a game that we want to continue to work on, and then we chose this one because it was so hilarious, and every time we play with a group, and then everyone will like laugh their guts out. It was great.
The charm too is like literally the format. So all the cards, like this is designed by Dan. Everything is just so kind of nice, and you can sort of
hold those up for the camera. There's a nice picture of a cucumber. That's one of the suggestive cards.
Yeah, like you could look at these cards.
Well, we are getting the zoom in. All right, what do we got? Cucumber,
Nice.
broken condom, assless chaps, crystal ball.
Yeah. So it's not like bad to hold these up. Like it doesn't feel embarrassing in public. So this is a really great party game also for that reason, because you can talk about these really goofy items without feeling weird, because the way that it's drawn is like super sensitive. Like every aspect of this game was taken into consideration. So yeah, going from this to the final thing was quite a journey, but like the focus was on the story. Like what are we saying with the game? And initially we knew that there was something really intriguing about the concept, but there were a lot of players that felt pretty uncomfortable. So during the incubator, we spent time really exploring the breadth of storytelling that you could explore. And we found that there's quite a lot of different stories you can tell. So now with our game, you can also online play other story modes as well, which we're very excited about.
Tell us about what's your favorite new story mode that you came up with?
I think the grandparents one is the funniest.
The grandparents.
So the premise there is essentially like this is all going down in the grandparents' household, and they're coming back and discovering this. So it's kind of exploring ageism in a different way, and like kind of talking about that without talking about that, which is really nice. So yeah, just kind of fighting against the concept that like, I don't know, old people don't talk about sex or like are very puritanical or whatever. So we just explored a gamut of like what stories are not told and how can we put this forward in a very playful way that doesn't make anyone uncomfortable, but like, gets to the heart of the matter.
One of the things I think is so interesting about your game is that it does have a strong element of storytelling in a role-playing mode, where you sort of take on a role of like one person is playing the grandparent, a grandparent, right?
Yeah.
Or are there two? Maybe there are two. Are there two grandparents in that mode? So you could.
It was the grandparent and the grandchild.
Oh, grandparent and the grandchild, right? Yeah. And then potentially other people that are involved, like if you have more players.
Yeah. So every single player gets dealt a hand of cards, and one of that is like your who are you? Like, what are you professionally?
Should I show those?
Yeah.
And those are different depending on the mode. But let's see the new cards.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So interestingly,
So
like
cool.
some of your visual design has stayed pretty similar. You've got this sort of like vaguely condom-looking card back.
Yes, which is part of the humor, and we talk about this a lot too. Like the table presence, bringing this to conventions immediately attracted attention because of the bright, playful design, and that was something that we were very uncompromising about when we were talking to publishers. And luckily we had a publisher that also agreed and did not want to change it. So we're publishing this with Clarkson Potter, and they've been really, really awesome in working with us and our values for the game specifically. So just really, really gorgeous. So you could draw something like one of the characters would be, let's just do a random hand of a character.
A random situation,
Yeah. Oh yes, Sandy Nicholas, an original. So you're playing as Sandy Nicholas, Santa Claus, and you are found booty popping against a yoga ball on the roof, and you
the
also
roof of the workshop, presumably.
So you have to first explain this original situation, and then also explain, why do you have nude selfies of Alex as well? So like the story.
That's the spouse. The name of the spouse.
Oh, the spouse is always named Alex.
Yeah.
Yes, that was another thing too. Like we were trying to make sure that the game is sensitive in the fact that like any gender, any orientation can play. So we really focused a lot to make sure that Alex and Sam seemed like, after many, many iterations, we went from like Brooke and like Red and Green originally to like Brooke and Taylor. Yeah. So just so many details.
For neutral names.
Yes, gender neutral names that we could use.
And for all the other characters as well, they're all gender neutral.
Yes.
Right, like Sandy Nicholas.
Yeah. And it plays into as well the humor of like, the pizza delivery person is like coming to your house to deliver pizza. So playing with those tropes in a new way.
Yeah, so like I was saying, I think what's interesting is you've got a pretty goal-oriented system. Everybody has their own agenda, right, which gets sort of resolved narratively by the end of the game.
Yes.
But it also, it's not like a very mechanically strict game. The way the game goes is more driven by how you're jointly constructing a story.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's more like a role-playing game. But then, when I look at your cards again, I feel like you've in some ways captured some of the magic of a game like Cards Against Humanity, but turned it in a very different direction, right? You're giving all of these things to riff off of, which sort of excite your imagination. But instead of being about like how terrible or evil of a thought can you have, the gist of all of your stuff is like about embarrassing situations that are hard to explain, which is just a very different headspace, but still has some of that kind of like ticklish energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from the first version to the last version, the part that we were struggling with was like, how do we finish this? Because we've had we had like very good energy in the middle of the game, and then eventually we realized, okay, well, the most simple, straightforward thing is to just do like awards. So like have like someone can choose at the very end stories that are perhaps the most athletic. Or the best self-care practice was like our favorite one from the newer edition.
Well, definitely booty popping against a yoga ball on the roof is the best self-care practice for a hardworking Santa Claus.
Absolutely. Then we just like have like a scapegoat card now that passes around. So
Single black card.
yeah. So everyone can sort of experience that. So it's not like the pressure's on one person to constantly tell a good story. Like if you mess up the first round, then you get to, experience the story from everyone else. So the pressure's off of you at that point.
Wait, so tell me exactly how this works, because I love the idea of just one black card that just says the scapegoat on it.
So originally the scapegoat card is whoever. It's not like the person who told the worst story. It's like so the spouse would decide, okay, so you are the cheater and you take all the responsibility.
Oh, okay, so this is the person who's going to take the blame for the whole thing.
Yeah. So originally we only have the scapegoat, so there's only like a loser and no winners. So
right. Okay, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. So the player's like, oh, this is I want to feel like rewarded for the story I told. So that's why we came up with all the awards.
So you might get the scapegoat card because you're the one who's taking the blame, whether people really believe it or not. You're the one who's gonna get blamed. But then you could also get an award for the type of story that you told. Nice.
Yeah.
So you guys started this. What I think. First, we should give a shout out to Yushin, another team member who's in chat right now. Hi, Yushin.
Hey.
And I think Yushin was saying, you started this back in 2018. Was it in the fall and winter of 2018?
Oh wow.
The fall, like
Yes.
it was the very first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the very first semester that you guys were in school here. And so that's almost 4 years ago. That's 3.5 years ago now.
It's a lifetime.
Yeah. And then the incubator, you must have been in the incubator starting in the 2020 to 2021 cycle, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Not the one that just ended, but
the first remote cycle.
Last time. Right, that was the first remote. So you guys were remote and just and working. That was about a year of work going through the incubator. And then what happened after? So I'd love to ask you, especially because you're one of the few non-digital projects. I think maybe there's 3 or 4 non-digital projects that have come through the incubator. What was it helpful for your project in making design decisions and taking it to the next step? What was that like being in the incubator remotely, and how did it affect the course of the game?
Well, the first thing that I can think of is playtesting this remotely.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So we had to find like different what is it called, like similar to tabletop simulation.
Playing cards.
Yeah, playing cards
Yeah.
IO. So different
Nice.
platforms to playtest board games, and yeah. So when we were at the incubator, so there were a bunch of advisors, and we got help on like, oh, how do you playtest this, or like how do you reach out to different publishers or resources. So yeah, I think we were lucky. Like if we're interested in a publisher or someone, we can just throw in the chat like, oh, does anyone know this person, and someone will probably be like, yeah, and then I would put you in touch. So I think that was a pretty awesome part of being in the incubator. Yeah.
I think we also at the time explored like how can we do this digitally, and it didn't end up being something that we went with, but we actually did try to pitch to mobile publishers as well at the time.
Yeah.
New apps that were coming out that then get bought up by other companies, but it's okay.
Rapidly changing world.
Yeah. But for the most part, everyone was like incredibly helpful in bringing this to the world. And I think for this game in particular, we cared a lot about like the community and doing the game as much justice as possible with making it sex positive and stuff, and making sure the messaging is like as positive as as far away from Cards Against Humanity as we can. And we reached out to like a lot of organizations and just
Coming up with the pitch deck was
Yeah.
a big deal.
just a lot of help went into this.
How many different publishers across the mobile publishers as well as like the board game publishers would you say you talked to?
I think we officially talked to 4. We talked to, I think Buffalo Games was one of the early ones. And then we talked to 2 book publishers, so Clarkson Potter and
Chronicle Books.
And then we reached out to 1 app, House Party.
I think it was House Party, and then.
But House
more.
Party didn't like respond back
No.
to us.
Yeah.
So
I think they were going through a lot of changes.
they
at
were
the
going,
time.
they were getting bought up by EA.
Right,
So,
yeah. So that happens.
Yeah.
but we did have someone who could have like we were one step away from having a conversation, but stuff happens. So
Yeah.
And how did you end up deciding to go with Clarkson Potter? Like, what was that like?
it was very straightforward.
I think Clarkson Potter. So Eric put us in touch with them actually before the incubator, and then so we brought our game to demo, and then they loved it, but then they were just like, we wish there were more stories or themes, because the cheating theme is kind of like negative or questionable for their
it was
audience.
like something that like kept people from getting to the table, that like once you're there you're fine, and you like understand that like we're not actually saying you did anything at all, like there's no blame being passed except the one like person who has to take blame for the entire thing. But the extreme humor, like that is really hard to pitch until you play through the thing. So that was, if you didn't have experience with it before, even just something like the publisher, like getting the right people at the table that like are open to an experience like this was probably challenging, because we got a lot of like scary feedback as well. Like, how could you?
If it hits like one wrong note, then it could really. Wait, so what's an example of scary feedback? If there's anything you feel like you can share.
Scary feedback was just the thought that anyone at the table was like so uncomfortable that they like felt the need to like put that in like the review that they wrote back for us. It wasn't, so with Clarkson Potter, at least if they said no, there was like some feedback we could work with. And then there was other feedback that was so off the mark of like what we wanted to
it's like
do
there's
with
no
the game.
strategy in this game.
There's like no strategy, this, that, and the other thing. This could be. One of the comments was like, this could be any sort of item that you find and you make up a story with. And like we knew that intrinsically that's not true. Like I can't go into a room and find a piece of paper and a pen and say like, who murdered this person? Like that's not.
Yeah, you guys are picking the items very purposefully.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So it was feedback like that, and just like some folks had a very bad experience because they were stifled by the whole concept of it. So that's not something you can control. You can just hope that there's acknowledgement going into it, like that is already set, but expectation is set when the publishers play, but you never know. Right.
So because not every game is for everyone or at every single time of whatever they're going through at the moment. Yeah, and I always find it fascinating that people would play a game like this and say, well, there's not much strategy in the game, right? And because one, it sort of reveals that they have just a certain orientation of like what they are expecting to find inside the box, which is certainly not true of every game. And then, and then they are so fixated on it and what they didn't find there that's the thing that gets stuck in their head, right?
Yeah.
But it sort of signals like, all right, thank you for saying that, because this game is not what you were looking for, and that's like a useful data point right there, right? You're like, almost like check. That didn't work for the person who was looking for a strategy game. Mission accomplished.
And I think what I liked about working with Clarkson Potter is, I think partly because people on their team are not like typical gamers.
Yes.
Yeah. So and they're enjoying the game. It's like, oh, okay, so we're getting somewhere, and then this is like opening up to new, our audiences that they're usually not exposed to games like this. So. And my mom played this game and she loved it. So I was like, oh, okay, that's great.
So pass me the box. I think this is worth talking about, because so you guys you came up with the new title, Nothing to See Here, right? So where did that come from?
That came from the incubator. That came from us having conversations with each other, saying like we need to figure out like the title is not really explaining what the game is about. So this at least is getting closer to the idea of the mechanics of like, oh, you're walking into a room, you're maybe expecting to see something, but there's nothing here. Don't worry about it. Like ignore it. So. Right,
nothing to see here, which I guess could be for all sorts of disastrous situations where you're like, don't move along, don't rubberneck.
Yeah.
Right, so I think it does kind of capture what you're going for, but it doesn't work there are other things supporting it, right? So you guys have this tagline up here that says, hilarity will ensue. That kind of cues like, this is a comedy game.
Yeah.
Right, and then when did you choose this color scheme? Because this like bold like pink box. again, I think, you guys were saying before you want to be as far away from Cards Against Humanity as possible.
Yeah.
It almost feels like this is like the super pink box with white letters is sort of a starkly different, but somehow in the same neighborhood as that like black box with white letters, Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, totally. It was a very open conversation actually with the designers. So they actually gave us I was looking through the documents the other day and I realized like they did a lot of work with us. Like it was so much hand in hand because they sent us a deck of competitor like games that like we could sort of style it in the direction of, and then we came back and said like, oh, like it's got to be bold. So we like went in the pink direction. So just every single step was a conversation, which made that, I think, a really great experience working with them because they were just so careful and appreciated that we were also very careful and thorough and thoughtful. So
Nice.
And I think we have eventually picked the pink because it's like very positive and it's like celebrating. Because like it's all about like sex positivity and then like all different kinds of kinks and sexuality. So I think this is it does a pretty good job of like representing like what we want to present in this game. So
Right, like I don't know what Clarkson Potter's publishing strategy is, but this seems like a natural for any kind of like sex toys store. Like, and this box would go really well next to a bookshelf full of, I don't know, like Pat Califia books or other things or sex toys. And it's definitely a huge step above. I mean, I have a history of complaining about bad sex games. So, and there usually are some, right? It's just like Sex Dice or something like that, where this is like a big step up. And then I think this tagline works really well too, and nicely set out here. It just says an outrageous storytelling game for adults. So like every word of that is kind of important, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that tagline.
Yeah.
How many versions?
How many versions of the tagline did you go through?
At least 10. Right?
So many. And that started during the incubator and then continued with Clarkson Potter because they had also their own marketing team that like had say in the stuff that we were putting on the box and even back of box copy, like all of those considerations. But
Nice. And so you're getting across, I think, storytelling game.
yes.
For people who, whether you know that term or not, it sort of signals like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing here, and maybe diffuses a little bit of the like, is it a strategy game where I'm going to win kind of energy. And then of course you have for adults.
Yeah.
Like you were saying. And I'm just going to read the back of the box because I thought this was done pretty well too. It starts off with like a in res media like scene setting. You've been discovered taped to the ceiling, half naked, holding an eggplant and massage oil. And there's actually examples of those cards are right here, like eggplant, half naked, and taped to the ceiling. What were you doing? And sort of a big black. That's because that's the central question, right? That the main player is going to have to figure out. Each player is dealt an identity, location, and some naughty items. Use them to develop a compelling narrative and prove your innocence. Come up with unexpectedly convincing explanations. I want to ask you about that, Bryce. And receive the most awards to win the game. If your story flops, you'll be the scapegoat. So unexpectedly convincing explanations is the sort of most distinctive phrase there. What does that mean in the context of Nothing to See Here?
Do you want to?
I don't know.
Well, so like it's really
Hard to
easy to
explain.
actually explain yourself out of it, I think. Like we've made it so that there are some items that are there's balance in this. So we've added some items that are normal but still like too close, like a cucumber, right? Like that you can say, yeah, I have this because I'm going to make a salad. And like that's super convincing. But then there's other stuff that you absolutely cannot explain yourself out of. So like in the game, the mounting tension is that you're dealt more items. So that perfect story that you've conceived, now you have to make room for the other objects or the other, explanations that are happening. And some people are just really, really good at it. But you do get better as you like play. So like the first time around, you're like trying to figure out your way like through this weird world that we've put you in. And then the second round, you're like, oh, I see what's happening. Okay. And then you get excited to like pull different cards and see like, oh, how can I convince someone that a like love egg is like a normal thing to have on you like on a day-to-day. And the professions help with that a lot. So
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think there was like a bartender who used love eggs to stir their drink or something.
Yeah, you like vibrate it up and to make it
Yeah,
frothy.
you make it shaky. Like these are normal. So yeah, that's also the thing, right? Like we're trying to like normalize these items.
Yeah.
So like all of these things that people don't normally talk about, we wanted to put it out in the public that like it just start to recontextualize what these things are to start a conversation and like normalize it. So
Right, and then it doesn't necessarily have to get hyper explicit. In fact, all of the explanations are sort of trying to move away from
Yeah.
the extremely explicit stuff, which might make some people even more uncomfortable, right? So the unexpectedly convincing, I think, is fascinating because it is about these combinatorial possibilities.
Yeah.
And so the more combinations you have to include, the more unexpected it is. But there is a little bit of skill that you, like you said, you acquire from playing. And even you could consider it a type of strategy, right? To sort of like figure out how to fit these things together. Oh, bring your job in, right? And then you get this combo, which creates that aha moment of the game that's appreciated by the other players, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of then ties into the whole voting like award system with the purple cards. They're like, that was completely awesome what you did. And I think that's the sort of the secret sauce for so many storytelling games to create that memorable experience. So we are almost out of time. We're in the last minute, but tell us where can people get this game? When is it going to be available? What's the plan?
So it's gonna be up, I think, in retail stores like Target and Barnes and Nobles, but also online on Amazon. I believe we have the link up there.
Yeah, there you go.
woo.
Yeah, is it pre-order right now or available?
Yeah, it's in
Pre-order, and then it
right
goes
now.
live on May 10th.
May 10th.
May 10th, so just a week from today. So if you pre-order it now, you'll get that shipped in that first batch, I guess.
Yep.
But that's awesome that you guys are in bookstores. I'm all talking about like this would be great in sex toy stores, where it's like a tiny fraction of like the Target.
Funny that you mentioned that because that is what we actually brought to the table.
Yeah.
Like when we went to Clarkson Potter, we were like, hey, no, like we actually really want to work with these select stores.
Yeah, we send them a list.
Yeah, we did. We did research and we're like, we should really be here because we don't want to, like, we think we have something interesting to say instead of sex toys. So,
Yes. Nice. Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on, and we love to see you. So thanks for coming back. It's been a while since we had Rachel here.
Yeah.
So all of you guys out there reading in chat, come up with an excuse to like show up in person once the Game Center Live resumes in the fall. We'd be happy to have you on as well. All right, let's hear it for Nothing to See Here.
Woo!
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Mary, Rachel, and Naomi. That was a wonderful showcase. It's great to see this game physically present. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming onto the stream.